A group of nuns in Texas are having an issue now with their bishop. They've sued him, in fact, and the Fort Worth Diocese that he's a part of over a dispute that involves one of their members, a fellow nun who's beset with a number of health problems, who is now being accused by this bishop of having violated her a vow of chastity with a priest. And they're making the point that this is not what this is really about, but more importantly, what are you talking about? She is not violating her vow of celibacy. She is very, very sick. You can see a photo here, by the way, of the nun in question. We're gonna get into her health problems, but they'll really give you an idea of how crazy these accusations are. So this is the Discalced Carmelite nuns of Arlington. I don't know that word, I apologize, I probably butchered it, but no offense to them, they seem great. They've accused Bishop Michael Olson in the Fort Worth Diocese of waging an overzealous investigation into the alleged chastity vow violation, confiscating the nuns' phones, and then spying on their texts, even showing up randomly to interrogate nuns for hours, all over this supposed vow of the violation of the vow of celibacy. We don't know who the priest is at this point, but what the nuns say is really going on is they are attempting to take control of the monastery. It's not about the sex, it's about the power and about the money. So saying, one of the members says, there's 72 acres in Arlington, Texas on the Trinity River in the middle of the Metroplex. It's worth 20 million or so. That's what he's trying to do. Apparently the nun, by the way, that they're accusing of, says has only encountered 4 or 5 men in the last quarter century. That is how sheltered they are. And so, but Maz, doesn't this sound like the premise for a show? These accusations of sex, fighting over control of the real estate, nuns against priests and all that. I think I could see this being on HBO.
Hey man, definitely the beginning of a show there. But then, especially the fact that she's only seen 5 dudes in 25 years. I mean, that's like then you go each episode, like you kind of show her encounter with the dude, and then she says like, "Hey, can you grab that can for me?" And the guy grabs the can, and then we don't know what happened, and maybe that led to, I don't know, did it lead to sex? I don't even know what the hell's going on here, to be quite honest with you. So this bishop is trying to get the land by saying that a nun had sex with somebody?
That's what they're asserting. We have no idea. We don't know if the vow of celibacy was violated. I also very much don't care. I want to be very clear about that. We don't know what his motivations are or the diocese. That's what they're asserting is the actual motivation.
But so he's saying that if you infringe your vow of celibacy, I get the land? It doesn't even.
I don't know. You gotta stay tuned for season 2 for how exactly the plot develops. But
I mean, talk about like the stakes being high. Like if you see someone and you're like, oh my God, I really want to just have sex. The nun is like, I want to have sex with that dude, and then she looks at him, and then she looks at the land, and she's like, but if I do, I've got to give up this land. And then she looks back at him, and now he's a very buff, dude, and she's like, and then she's like, and then we see what happens in the next episode. I don't know.
That's the romance novel version of this story. So I'll write that up. I'll release it on my Patreon. It's gonna be hot. In this particular case, though, I really do feel bad for the nuns, assuming that what they're alleging is true, and we don't know. But to close, the Reverend Mother Superior Teresa Agnes Gerlach, that's the nun who's being accused here, is apparently severely ill. Requires a central catheter line, a feeding tube, intravenous drip for 10 hours a day. So to have to also go through all of this, that sucks. I feel really bad for them. It's as far from my life experience as any on earth, but still, like, we have to remember, these are people. The nuns are people, the bishop is people. People do what they do, not for necessarily divinely inspired reasons all the time. Sometimes it's about power and sometimes it's about money. That's what they're alleging. I don't know for sure, but I will.
By the way, if you're gonna HBO, if you're gonna accuse a nun of having, breaking her vow of celibacy, you should pick the nun who's not like this
on
poor
a
lady
catheter?
seems on a catheter feeding tube. I'm sure there's another nun there that they walking around, possibly able to go behind the shed somewhere and do something like that. This pastor should really reconsider his strategy. I think he really messed up on this one.
Yeah. Again, we don't know. Maybe the vow was broken, but I also want to be very clear. I don't care.
And you call the show
that I think are sacred. I don't care. Yeah.
The show is called Oh Vow. No. All right. Hey man. Hey. There's no bad ideas.
It's the beginning of the process.
Beginning of it. We need a title.
Check out the Damage Report podcast each day, wherever you get your podcasts, whether Pocket Casts or Stitcher or iTunes. You can join me as I give you the news and stories you want, with a range of co-hosts and interview guests jumping in on the fun each day. Again, that's the Damage Report, wherever you get your podcasts. And if you get them at iTunes, don't forget to rate and review. Sometimes I'll read them live on the show.